Hello, and welcome back to the Beatdown Bandits podcast, episode 17. I am Colin, and today I'm discussing one of my kind of new favorite shows, and definitely one of the biggest trending shows on Netflix currently, which is Cobra Kai. And I would be willing to bet, I don't know, it's in the top 10 right now. It's gonna go number one. Oh, for sure. So, Cobra Kai, while originally was pitched to Netflix, was actually declined and then picked up on YouTube Red, which then YouTube Red, I think most people realize, became YouTube Premium. So, after 2 seasons on YouTube Premium, Cobra Kai was picked up by Netflix, and the first 2 seasons went live on August 28th, 2020. So, August 28th was a Saturday, and today is actually the 1st of September, so we're just a couple days past that. Um, so me not really having much better in the way of things to do on on that weekend, I ended up binge watching both seasons that first weekend on the 28th and the 29th. So now before I kind of get into like the whole Cobra Kai story too much, I don't really want to give away like many spoilers when it comes to Cobra Kai, so I'll keep things kind of vague at least. I think it's important to kind of get a quick history lesson on Daniel LaRusso, Johnny Lawrence, Mr. Miyagi, Cobra Kai Dojo, and just kind of a few other pieces of like Karate Kid lore, pretty much. So I'm just going to kind of briefly discuss important parts of Karate Kids 1 through 3, so you can kind of get a full grasp on how Cobra Kai kind of fits into the Karate Kid world. Now, it should be noted that there is a Karate Kid Part 4, and then there's the newest Karate Kid with like Jackie Chan. Those should not and will not be associated with the story, so we're just going to kind of move on from that. All right, so we're going to jump back to 1984. I'm just going to like pretty much straight like read some bits and pieces from like the Karate Kid Wikipedia. So if you want to know the full story, if you haven't seen the movies somehow anyway, just kind of look it up there if you want to know more. So I want to kind of just jump into Karate Kid 1. So like I said, 1984, Daniel and his mother Lucille moved from Newark, New Jersey to Los Angeles, California, and specifically Reseda, California. Just kind of a, lower-ish class part of Los Angeles. So they live in a kind of a generic apartment, and there's a handyman there by the name of Mr. Miyagi, who's very, very kind, soft-spoken Okinawan man. So while Daniel is kind of checking out the scene in Los Angeles and the beaches and stuff, he ends up meeting his future love interest, Allie Mills, who is a high school cheerleader and has an ex-boyfriend by the name of Johnny Lawrence. So Johnny kind of sees the attention that Daniel is getting from Allie, doesn't really like it, and Johnny, who happens to also be a black belt and is pretty much the top martial artist in the area for under 18, from the Cobra Kai. He's multi-time champion, and Cobra Kai also is a very aggressive form of karate. But basically, Johnny and the other Cobra Kai students and his friends that are in the Cobra Kai pretty much bully Daniel throughout the Karate Kid, throughout the whole movie. So Daniel, kind of going against him though, he's a bit of a hothead and actually retaliates a little bit more than what he should, causes a lot of his own problems from this. Things escalate though when it kind of fast forwards to Halloween, and Daniel ends up taking a hose and while in the bathroom spraying Johnny while he's in the bathroom and gets him soaking wet, and there's like at a Halloween dance. So the Cobra Kai basically chase Daniel down the road and start beating the crap out of him when Mr. Miyagi kind of jumps in, intervenes, and defeats all of these trained black belts. So Daniel kind of sees this, asks Mr. Miyagi to help train him, which after visiting Cobra Kai, Mr. Miyagi and Daniel kind of both agree to study together or whatever, because Mr. Miyagi, to keep Daniel from getting bullied and beaten up by multiple Cobra Kai students, agreed that they would kind of come to a truce until the All Valley Karate Championship. So that would allow Mr. Miyagi to be able to train Daniel to fight in this Karate Championship. So training starts. Mr. Miyagi works with Daniel, kind of slowly giving him different ways of kind of like chores, like menial chores. It's like everybody's heard like wax on, wax off. That's where that comes from. Is gives him chores to do that ends up creating defensive muscle memory, and he learns karate through muscle memory of doing chores. So teaches Daniel that way. They begin a really good like kind of father son relationship, and Mr. Miyagi teaches Daniel a lot about like personal life balance. So that's been a big focus of Daniel's life is personal balance within himself, not just physical balance during karate, but life balance. So Daniel takes these lessons, gets a good like boyfriend girlfriend relationship with Allie. So things work out very well for him. So they get to the tournament. Daniel is actually becomes very good throughout all of this and has worked his way through the semifinals when the Cobra Kai's sensei, whose name is John Kreese, instructs the Cobra Kai student that is facing Daniel in the semifinals by the name of Bobby to get himself disqualified by illegally striking Daniel's knee and injuring him, which Bobby does. Bobby gets himself disqualified, thus moving Daniel to the finals. However, he is injured and cannot compete. Mr. Miyagi is able to use kind of an ancient Japanese technique where he claps his hands together, runs them together like so, and warms them up and heals Daniel that way in his knee. So Daniel and Johnny fight in the finale. It's kind of back and forth a little bit, and it gets tied 2-2. And after Johnny takes an elbow into Daniel's injured knee, think Daniel's going to be done. He gets up. He's got an injured leg. Well, he does this crane stance, which he learned from Mr. Miyagi by watching him and has kind of been practicing on his own. Daniel learns this technique, does the crane kick, and wins 3-2 by crane kicking Johnny in the face. So Johnny, realizing like, hey, Daniel's a pretty good fighter, has learned like respect for Daniel, presents the actual trophy to Daniel. That's the end of part 1. So that's kind of where the most important things you kind of need to know for at least like leading into Cobra Kai. And honestly, if you just watch part 1, that's all you really need to know to watch Cobra Kai. However, part 2 and part 3 of the Karate Kid have like kind of partially been trickled into Cobra Kai, and have not yet quite like played a big role. However, I think going forward, I think you'll need to know more of part 2 and part 3, and I have suspicion that especially part 2 for season 3, and maybe going forward, we'll need to know more about Karate Kid part 3. So we're going to briefly talk about those as well. So part 2 starts off really like right after the tournament. Like Daniel and Mr. Miyagi are literally walking out of the All Valley tournament, where we see Sensei John Kreese kind of basically choking out Johnny Lawrence. He breaks his second place trophy and is embarrassed that Johnny lost to Daniel. So he's basically choking him out. Mr. Miyagi steps in, stops the fight, and basically subdues Sensei Kreese. So now we kind of fast forward 6 months. Daniel's mom, or Daniel has now recently been broken up with from Allie. Allie dumped him for like a football player in college. So Daniel's kind of upset about that, and now Daniel's mother is working farther away, so she's not going to be around. And then Mr. Miyagi receives a letter from Okinawa that his father is sick. So he's planning on going to Okinawa. Daniel would like to go with him, and he does. So you kind of get some backstory with Mr. Miyagi and his life prior. To summarize, Mr. Miyagi loved a woman named Yuki, and they wanted to get married. However, Mr. Miyagi's childhood friend, Sato, was kind of going to be in an arranged marriage with the same woman, Yuki. So Sato and Mr. Miyagi instantly got a rivalry, and Sato, when they were younger, challenged Mr. Miyagi to a fight to the death for basically the love of this woman. And Mr. Miyagi, rather than doing that, left for the United States and has not been back. So now he's going back because his father is dying. So Sato still has this hatred for him. And they meet also a gentleman by the name of Chosen, who we find out is Sato's nephew. So Chosen uh, and Daniel are about the same age, and they kind of have this little bit of a rivalry as well. Basically, because Chosen is very close with Sato, and Sato and Mr. Miyagi have this rivalry. So they kind of get into it themselves. Sato continues to say, "Okay, we're going to fight to our death, Mr. Miyagi, and we're going to do this." So Miyagi continues to decline. So Sato is a very wealthy businessman, and so what he decides to do is destroy the village that Mr. Miyagi lived in. His father lives. He's bringing in bulldozers and going to destroy the village. Is his plan. So while this is happening, basically saying, okay, I'm either going to destroy the village or we fight. So Mr. Miyagi finally, reluctantly agrees. He complies. He's going to fight Sato. When this happens, they're scheduled to fight, and they're going to come in. A big, giant, typhoon storm comes in. Okay, you can't see. It's a windstorm. It's like a hurricane tornado mix. It's crazy. So all the villagers are trying to scramble, find shelter, and get to safety. And Sato ends up getting trapped in this dojo. They're their family dojo that collapses. Mr. Miyagi and Daniel rush, and they go and they save Sato. And then Daniel sees this little child in a tower, and Daniel goes up to save him with the help of Sato. And meanwhile, Chosen has hidden and did not want, he wasn't willing to go out in the typhoon and help save Sato. He didn't help to go save the child, and so Sato is just embarrassed that his nephew wouldn't even go out to help save this. So the village is kind of destroyed. However, they start rebuilding, and Sato comes in with the bulldozers and stuff this time to help rebuild the village. So friendship restored, basically. And you also find out that the woman Yuki that Mr. Miyagi and Sato were basically had this rival over, never married Sato to begin with, and because of her love for Mr. Miyagi, so they kind of get back together, so to speak. So part 2 ends with Chosen being very upset that now Sato is very appreciative of Daniel and is back with friends with Mr. Miyagi. So at this festival that they're celebrating, Chosen comes in and basically attacks Daniel, and basically same thing is they're going to fight to the death. So Daniel basically kind of gets the crap kicked out of him by Chosen, and then finally kind of traditional hero story, kind of come from behind victory, and was able to beat Chosen. And shows him mercy, does not obviously kill Chosen, but lets him basically drop to the ground. And that's the end of part 2. So you kind of have some backstory and history of Mr. Miyagi there. Part 3 kind of jumps to the next fall. So you see it kind of starts with Kreese. So Sensei Kreese, who no longer has the Cobra Kai, he's lost his business, he's broke, he has no money, ends up running into Terry Silver, who is a former war friend and also helped found Cobra Kai. So he's also a martial artist. So these two want to get back with and start Cobra Kai back again and get it back on top of the karate scene in LA. And so they start it back up, and obviously Kreese dislikes Daniel and Mr. Miyagi. So he's got this rivalry, speaks with Terry Silver, who kind of behind the scenes, without Daniel knowing, kind of goes behind Mr. Miyagi's back and befriends Daniel and says, yeah, I can teach you all these new tricks, and basically gets him to, injure himself. And then, surprise, just kidding, I'm Cobra Kai, John Kreese is here, and we're back here to kind of kick your butt, basically. So Terry Silver, who's obviously an adult and cannot compete in a karate tournament anymore, hires they call him karate's bad boy, is Mike Barnes. So we get the introduction to Mike Barnes, who's now going to be the rival of Daniel in part 3. So Mike is coming from out of the area, but they bring him in to join Cobra Kai and to fight Daniel and basically punish him. The whole premise is, you gain a point on him and then you lose a point by doing something illegal and then you gain a point, and then you lose it again, and you gain it and you lose it. So basically just to continue just beat on Daniel in the tournament, because the guy is way too good for Daniel to beat. So finally, after basically like threats and things like that, Daniel agrees to compete in the tournament and fights in the All Valley to basically protect his title as champion. So Daniel's able to do it by performing this kata that he learned from Mr. Miyagi. Ends up beating Mike, and Terry Silver and John Kreese are obviously upset again. Cobra Kai is destroyed again, and they're gone. So now we kind of fast forward 35 years. So now we're kind of to the point of Cobra Kai, and that's kind of where we are now. So if you haven't watched Cobra Kai or don't want any spoilers, I probably won't give away too much that you may not already know. But if you don't want any spoilers, just feel free to pause now and go watch Cobra Kai and then come back and finish this up. But I just kind of I'll give some pretty much spoiler-free review of season 1 and season 2 of Cobra Kai, and then kind of some theories going forward. So, like I said, we're going to jump forward like 35 years, and yeah, so really the scripts have flipped for Johnny and Daniel. So Johnny's kind of living in a crappy apartment like Daniel was back in 1984. He's down on his luck. He's working as a handyman. He quickly loses his job at the start. And Daniel, on the opposite side, is doing very well. He's living in a very nice house. He owns multiple luxury car sales groups, happily married, has a teenage daughter and a slightly younger son. And really, when it comes down to Johnny, is like you don't know much other than he's not currently seeing anybody. He's single. He's living in a little small crappy apartment. So again, I don't want to give away too much of like the plot, because there's just like lots of little unique pieces to it. And in full disclosure, like they have just done an amazing job with this story. I really enjoy the show. They brought in like a perfect amount of kind of corny 80s nostalgia and jokes mixed with like this modern cast of like 20-year-old actors who are kind of playing these teenage kids on the show. It's a perfect mix. I don't find anybody too obnoxious and annoying. It's so good. I would definitely recommend it to anybody. So Johnny kind of decides to kind of take this little bullied kid under his wing. He ends up teaching him kind of Cobra Kai karate that Johnny knows very well. So he ends up reopening Cobra Kai in this dojo, which for obvious reasons upsets Daniel and kind of re-sparks this rivalry. So Daniel sees Cobra Kai open back up and like, what is happening? So first season, kind of jump through the first season, and it ends at the famous All Valley tournament, with Cobra Kai having obviously now a very big presence and kind of bringing the name back. However, Johnny kind of starts noticing trends in his students that are very like hyper aggressive and kind of on the edge of being a little dirty. So being like now the sensei rather than the student, he kind of has a new set of eyes as what like the of what Cobra Kai represents and what they look like outside of the actual fight. So it puts a very unique spotlight on Johnny Lawrence, who in the 80s was pretty much known as one of the biggest a-holes. And William Zabka, who plays the part of Johnny Lawrence, has always just kind of played that bad guy through the 80s. So now you kind of look at him and you kind of want to root for him. And with Daniel being like the wealthy, well-off, and kind of rude person that he is now, you bounce back and forth of like, who is the good guy and who is the bad guy in Cobra Kai. So it's like one episode you're rooting for Daniel, the next you're kind of rooting for Johnny. It's very unique. So jumping to season 2, John Kreese is now back in the mix, kind of helping with Johnny and Cobra Kai. And now Daniel has started up his own Miyagi-Do dojo. And so has his own students, and it kind of just completes that Cobra Kai Miyagi rivalry. So Daniel has his own star student in Robbie, who has some kind of major significance to another major character. I'm just going to leave that spoiler out. You're just going to have to watch the show. So Daniel, who also has his own teenage daughter that I mentioned earlier, is one of his students as well. And his daughter kind of develops feelings for Robbie and the star student Miguel for the Cobra Kai dojo. So there's kind of a bit of a love triangle there, which then sparks a legit, like an all-out brawl in the school when there's a new female student at Cobra Kai who does not really approve of the love triangle for a reason I won't mention. So this results in like tons of injuries, including a very major injury to that starfighter for Cobra Kai, Miguel, who's basically kicked downstairs and has now life-threatening injuries. So Johnny and Daniel are now very torn at the end of season 2. You don't know what's going through their heads. And with this big giant fight and the injuries involved, they both are like doubting everything right now, and they're none of them are proud of what's happening. So you can almost kind of feel like a truce kind of coming like slowly between them. So that's kind of where season 2 ends. So my kind of theories for season 3 going forward is we have a major cliffhanger at the end. So this is kind of a fairly big spoiler. So pause now or don't listen for the next 30 seconds. Is Ali Mills from Karate Kid Part 1, who has now connected to Johnny on Facebook, but he doesn't even necessarily see it, because he like threw his phone out, and then you kind of see that she's added him as a friend on Facebook or whatever. So we find out in season 1 of Cobra Kai that actually Ali and her now husband are both doctors. However, they live in Colorado. So my suspicion is that Ali and either her or her husband is going to kind of come in and save the day with the severely injured Cobra Kai student Miguel. So this might lead to some type of resparked love interest between Johnny and Ali. I don't know. So I have some suspicions there. I also suspect that with season 3 is going to kind of end with a very brutal All Valley tournament kind of between the two dojos. I mean, there's a giant rivalry right now. And between Cobra Kai and Miyagi. So I also have a theory that with Kreese back and heavily involved with Cobra Kai, that Johnny may actually join forces with Daniel at Miyagi or start up something new and to try to take down Cobra Kai. That's just a suspicion that I have. I don't know. But not before I think there's going to be a few students who end up kind of switching loyalties, honestly, between dojos. And we might see a new mix of students in the mix. So anyway, thank you very much for kind of listening to my theories on Cobra Kai. I felt like it was worthy of just discussing, because I really enjoyed it. I've liked watching it. Probably just going to end up binge watching it again. But yeah, comment and let me know what you think. If you are watching on YouTube, there's a friendly reminder. You can also listen to me on Spotify or Apple Podcasts. Or if you're on those, hey, I'm also on YouTube. So you can reach out to me directly on YouTube just by commenting there. Or you can find me on Twitter at Gobuckeye Gaming. That's G0BUCKI Gaming. It's all one word. G0BUCKI GAMING. And reach out to me there, send me a message or whatever, and then let me know. All right. Thank you very much for listening, and have a great day. Later.